With Dead Island 2 being out for a little over a week at this point, and it quickly becoming one of my favorite zombie games ever made, which honestly is a little funny to think that this is a game that we all thought was never going to see the light of day, finally came out. And although some parts arguably are a little dated and other parts of it are working against it for some people, I think its strengths really lay in its simplicity and willingness to embrace exactly what it is, a video game. A video game whose sole purpose is to just maim decomposed bodies in as satisfying of a way as possible. So today, I wanted to go over a few things I think Dead Island 2 got right, and how the game is a strong building block for not only future zombie games or even something much more simpler like big DLC expansions for this game, but also setting the groundwork for a really strong third entry into the series, with a flesh system being front and center, with Dambuster Studios or whatever other development team Deep Silver gets to work on a third entry should we ever get one. But today what I wanted to do is go over a few things I think Deep Silver and Dambuster Studios got right with this game. I don't think it's getting enough praise considering how well of a state it was released in comparison to two recent releases that came out being damn near unplayable, those games being Jedi Survivor and Redfall. But I want to start this off on a little bit of a lighter note. I do really appreciate the way they handled the characters in this game. I don't remember too much on how the original Dead Island handled the characters, but hearing how it was going to be handled this time around, I was a little on the fence. It's kind of a delicate balance you need to find when you're bringing characters into a game and they all have different attributes and different stats, and how much their skill set, or in this case even the skill cards that you're given throughout the course of the game, are going to affect your playstyle, your approach, and your overall experience with this title. And while some people may not like it, for me personally, I do like how it panned out. There's not a drastic difference, or at least not an immense difference where one character completely dominates the roster. I think the skill set or their set attributes really have some small nuances that cater to certain playstyles. You know, you might go after a character that has more toughness or higher health or higher agility, more critical hit damage. For me personally, I loved playing as Danny because her innate skills, a skill that's very unique to her, is Thunderstruck, which means every heavy attack she gave triggers a small explosion, which can potentially knock back multiple zombies at once, giving you that space you need in case you're being surrounded by multiple zombies from many different angles. Her stamina is also much higher than other characters, which means you can basically initiate those heavy attacks much more often. You don't have to wait for longer periods of time in between each one of those attacks, or even in between one of those more unique attacks like a drop kick, for instance, which also takes from your stamina bar. And the way they also implemented the skill cards complements these characters rather than really take away from it, and there's no skill card that's specific to each character. I mean, sure, there might be a particular card that caters towards Danny, and I believe, I could be wrong here, there's a card that caters to two characters at once, not one specific one. The only difference that I notice with the skill cards from character to character is that depending on what stage you're at in the game and what character you're playing as determines what order you get them in. So for instance, if you play as Ryan, in the beginning you're given block, versus if you're playing as Danny, in the beginning you're given dodge. And then for your attacks, Danny's given drop kick while Ryan is given flying strike. Later on, Ryan is given drop kick and Danny's given flying strike. Same thing with the dodge and block. You're not necessarily missing out on the cards per se, you're just getting them at different stages. You're introduced to the alternative depending on what character you choose as. And that kind of rolls me into the next thing, the skill cards. That could have easily been something that took away from the experience and took away from the whole character and their skill set or set attributes, but it complements it very well. I do love the idea of how you can switch them out on the fly. You don't have to go to a workbench or break out of combat or really wait for a particular time. You can do it whenever you want. You can drop kick, pause the game, switch over to flying strike, hit another zombie, switch back to drop kick, and then you can keep doing that. Obviously, it's going to be a little pain in the ass to keep cycling between those menus, but I think with enough messing around, you can really find a very, very strong skill card loadout that complements very well the character that you're playing as. You know, provided obviously you put the time and effort to experiment with that stuff. Or you can just ignore it altogether and just go for the basic stuff and just enjoy it. You're not forced to play a particular way. And speaking of the skill cards, I do also like how they address the whole curveball system, which are basically throwables in this game. You gotta find them in the environment, whether it be Molotov, pipe bomb, sticky bomb, caustic bomb. You can equip two at all times, and just like the skill cards, you can swap them out on the fly whenever you want. You do gotta wait for the cooldown just in case if you already use, let's say, a Molotov and you're waiting for the next one to cycle through. If you try to cheat the system and equip a pipe bomb, it's not gonna let you do that. You gotta still wait for the cooldown, so you can't be slick with it like that. But I still really do love how the whole throwable system is its own separate thing. It complements the combat. You can be very aggressive or even tactical with whenever you decide to use these throwables, and it doesn't require any extra looting or scavenging for parts to craft a Molotov. Nah, it's already there, man. You just gotta wait for that cooldown and wait for that perfect opportunity to throw it. And while we're touching on the combat, I've kind of already briefly mentioned it, but I can't underemphasize how good the stamina bar was handled this time around. Being able to initiate normal attacks or even running without that affecting the stamina bar, I think changes the flow of combat entirely. In the original Dead Island game as well as the Dying Light games, your stamina bar is everything, whether if you want to run, perform a kick, a drop kick, anything like that. Any type of movement essentially is going to exert some type of exhaustion on your character, which pulls from the stamina bar. In Dead Island 2, the only time your stamina bar is pulled from is whenever you're initiating a heavy attack or a drop kick or a flying kick or a ground pound, basically any type of quote-unquote special move. But as far as running or basic one-handed attacks, or by one-handed attacks, I mean not a heavy attack, it doesn't pull from the stamina bar, so there's no reason for you to disengage, run around the corner, try and find some type of safe space, or slowly walk to this type of safe space because you can't run because the stamina bar is a little too punitive. Don't get me wrong, I do like the stamina bar and how it works in, say, even the Dying Light games, but because it works in this specific way, the action can just keep coming. You don't have to stop, disengage, and try to stay alive. And it's with these constant attacks that the gore and flesh system, this game's bread and butter, ultimately really starts to shine. If you want to take the time, hang around, and basically completely maim a dead zombie, you can. You can hack away any type of flesh from the zombie's body all the way down to just the skeletal remains. You can actually see how their bodies are kept together, and that depends on the type of weapon that you used to rip off the flesh, intestines, hair, and of course the particular part of body that you're swinging at. You can see the intestines if you aim for the stomach. You can see the heart and ribs if you aim for the chest. You can see the skull, eyeballs, and the retina that holds the eyeballs in place. It seems like rightfully so. Dambuster's entire budget basically went to that, and how detailed these physical bodies are. I'm a sucker for gore. I'm a sucker for, paying very close attention to stuff like this. So the fact that they were able to make it this in depth is just completely jaw-dropping, and every zombie you can actually do that with. And it's not even tied to just melee weapons. If you use any of the guns in this game, which is another thing I think they handled very correctly, it's not just entirely melee focused. There's so many different weapon varieties, even as far as guns go, from a nail gun, pistols, revolvers, shotguns, both pump action and semi-automatic, or even sawed-off shotguns. There's bolt-action rifles, there's ARs that are both semi and fully automatic, there's semi-automatic pistols, and I also seen a machine pistol, or basically it was an Uzi. And each one of these guns you can alter similar to the way you can do with melee weapons. You can equip them with any type of elemental effect, whether that be fire, electricity, acid, bleeding effect. And then on top of that, you can add on further weapon modifications like faster reload, increased accuracy, increased base damage. There's complexity to the blueprints themselves, and some of them require actual zombie parts. And a good blueprint that you can actually equip on the guns and even the melee weapons is called Acid Rain. So whenever you have acid equipped on your gun, which would then mean every time you kill a zombie with Acid Rain equipped, a little cloud of acid forms, and it affects anything within that cloud minus yourself. And so everything in that cloud slowly starts to burn. And the cool thing on top of all of this, not even tied to just the guns themselves, even the melee weapons, you're not stuck with anything that you put on that weapon. So you have a pistol and you love the pistol, but you're sick of the bleeding effect, then you can equip fire, or you can equip acid, or you can just remove it altogether. Same thing with weapon modifications. Let's say the gun reloads just fine on its own, you don't need fast reload, you'd rather have something else. You can swap that out at any workbench, which in its own small way adds a pretty decent amount of replayability and a whole hell of a lot of reusability, because now if you committed to a particular element type or a specific modification on a particular weapon and you decide you don't like it or it's not as useful as you initially thought, you're not throwing that weapon away, you can just swap that shit out. So the fact that you can interchange blueprints, weapon modifications, elements, curveballs, and your skills all at the drop of a hat without having to go into a bunch of different menus or do anything specific, with the exception of course, having to find the workbench when it comes to anything pertaining to your weapons, I think Dead Island has a very quote-unquote aggressive approach. The mindset is to not get you entirely out of the combat, but rather have all these little things that will really tailor your playstyle and how you experience this game, not on its own, but once you start doing these little alterations with the skill set, the curveball, and the character you decide to choose, or the character you play as or main, then the culmination of everything really gives a solid experience. And I would say two other things I think they handled very well right off the bat. I would say it's both a good and a bad thing of how you have these smaller areas. It's good in the sense that you have these different variations on the environment, different approaches, different points of interest, different side quests, different characters. The sunset and just the entire layout is entirely different from Venice Beach to Beverly Hills to Bel Air. You know, the vibe and atmosphere is not always the same. It's all different. And it's nice just to go from area to area just to fuck around. Each place has different fuse boxes, have different chests to unlock, specific enemies to fight, and different secrets to find on your own. I also love how they approach challenges and being rewarded blueprints. If you pay attention to your challenge screen at different milestones, you're given blueprints for different things, whether that be an electric mod for your weapons or increased durability or something specific, something unique to unlocking these particular challenges. It's stuff to work towards, and you're rewarded in a way that will further benefit you and how you decapitate and maim all of the undead that you come across in this game. And I absolutely love that this game doesn't take itself too seriously. It embraces exactly what it is, a game that takes a satirical approach to pop culture and how people view LA, and I love it. And I said it before and I'll say it again, if you haven't played Dead Island 2, if you're a fan of zombie games, gore, any type of first person experience, I highly recommend this game. I don't think this game can get enough credit, especially for the shine and polish that this game released in. I've had zero problem with this game since launch, which is how it should be. But once you take into consideration the development process that not only this title has been through, but titles that have released within the last 2 weeks, again, naming Redfall and Jedi Survivor, this game is one that should really be praised, sadly, for just following what it should do, releasing in a playable, polished state that honestly everyone deserves to experience and play straight out the gate. But that was just my approach to Dead Island 2 and everything I feel like they got right. Did I miss anything? Let me know down in the comments section. Let's talk. I genuinely want to hear from you. But in the meantime, hey, maybe consider checking out the Discord. Link is down in the pinned comment. There's about roughly 3,000 members, and if you just want to come in, fuck around, talk shit to someone, or even talk shit to me directly, feel free to join, or even follow me on my socials, which are also linked down in the pinned comment. But like always, guys, my name is Cynic. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.